Hey folks, this is Jake Davis with my second video of the day, and this is going to be this month's retro review. I'm going to do something a tad different this month. I'm going to do a creature double feature for you. We're going to talk about two different monster movies from two different decades with virtually nothing in common. Let's get into it. First movie I want to talk about is 30 Days of Night from 2007, directed by David Slade, produced by Sam Raimi, and starring Josh Hartnett, Melissa George, Danny Houston, Ben Foster, and Mark Boone Jr. The whole concept of this movie is based on a comic book that was released about 5 years earlier, indie comic. The concept of it is a wild pack of vampires attack this Alaskan town during the 1 month of perpetual darkness that, Alaska gets. Unfortunately, those poor bastards. That has to drive you crazy. That has to just be maddening to live like that. Anyhow, I can't even imagine, man. It drives me crazy living in Florida. There's one season. There's one season. If you sleep late on a random weekend in December, you will miss all of winter, and that's a fact. Anyhow, of course, spoilers here because I want to talk about the movie a little bit because I got two movies to talk about. I don't want to go too long, but the problem here is Josh Hartnett starts finding during the first day, right before the last day, when the sun sets, it's going to be dark for 30 days. And a lot of people are leaving the small town. And throughout the day, Hartnett, the sheriff, is noticing all kinds of things wrong. He finds this like a campsite that's burned all these satellite phones. Somebody took an axe to this like a radar or something like that, some radio equipment. Somebody killed a bunch of dogs. Eventually catch Ben Foster. He's being a freak, terrorizing people, terrorizing this diner in town. And on the same day everybody's leaving town, this guy just somehow shows up out of nowhere. So it's pretty easy to narrow down who the suspect is, who the perp is. So Hartnett goes to do some investigating and starts to find some dead bodies scattered around. And then boom, the vampires attack, and they just start tearing through people's houses, one house at a time, ripping through, just eating all these people's lives. Some truly grisly, great stuff. Some great horror movie sequences. Just one overhead shot panning over the whole main street. Like when you first get there, there's this great shot. You see Main Street, just see kind of the whole layout of the town, and then you see the kind of repeated shot later on. And there's just like all the blood in the snow and people screaming and being jumped and run down by these vampires. It's just so. It's great. It's great. It's just great horror movie filmmaking. It really is. That part is, at least. And then we get to the problem with the movie, which is the second and third act, because we basically spent half the film on the first night, but it's 30 Days of Night. So I'll say the exact same thing I said in 2007 when this film came out, and I was disappointed. And now it's a big thing now. Shows like Westworld and Watchmen, by the way. 30 Days of Night should have been a TV show. It should have been a 6-part, 8-part TV series. That would have been the best fucking way to do this. Spend more time on the month, on the story, on the desperation, Because I'm sitting there now, I'm interested. How do they find food? How do they forage? I mean, so much of that food is going to freeze or rot over those 30 days because now there's no power going anywhere. You guys got to not only worry about the vampires eating you, but you got to worry about fucking freezing to death. You're in fucking Alaska. Anyhow, 30 days are running down, and they've basically been able to hold out a handful of humans. As this has all gone on, they've realized that it is vampires. It's like a disease. People who survive being scratched or bit eventually turn. but they're able to hold on to their humanity before they go full vampire loyalist feral, before they turn SJW. Yeah, so anyhow, they also he kills this one bitch by one chick vampire by having her follow him into some stoner's house where he hits her with a UV lamp and she burns her up. I'm just like, man, why didn't you just take that shit with you? I mean, I would set up a bigger trap with that. Get some reflectors going and shit. Try to kill more than one of these motherfuckers. Anyhow, but yeah, I mean, the movie doesn't really go into... It just kind of rushes through most of its film. So then we get to the third act, and finally realize that the vampire's plan is basically to... Because it's an oil town, they're going to pump all the big containers, above ground containers, because you can't really store anything underground in the cold like that. And they're gonna just, the whole town gets drenched like a sea of oil down all the streets, and they're gonna burn the whole town down to kind of cover up their tracks, since the sun's coming up at dawn. At the same time, Josh Hartnett's estranged wife and a little kid are hiding under this car because they got stuck during some mission. And Hartnett, and they're either going, if they run, they get eaten by the vampires. If they stay, they're gonna burn alive. So Hartnett decides to take some blood out of a dead vampire and inject it into himself, you know, smack style, and turn himself into a vampire and go out there. Now, when a friend of mine ruined, who knew the comic, kind of told me this was going to be the ending, kind of ruined it for me. Don't you love those friends? I'm one of those friends. But don't you love them? I don't like when I have friends who do that to me, but I'm a friend who does that to you. You just gotta put up with it. Anyhow, when I do it, it's to warn people, not to give away the great, awesome ending. But yeah, he turns himself into a vampire. Instead of going out there using his humanity and his pure rage and his newfound power and just ripping through them, he challenges their alpha, who's Danny Houston, to a fist fight. He gets in one lucky shot, punches through the fucker's head, and kills him. And then all the other vampires just leave, and they let him leave. So he saves a handful of people in the town. He kills one vampire, maybe 2 or 3 others throughout the run of the month. At least 2 others. And then after the vampires leave to go, by the way, just do this to another town next year. He sits with his estranged wife, waits for the sun to come up, and then he burns to death to end the movie. Shit. It's an awesome movie with beautiful photography, great art direction that is totally falls apart in its last 15 minutes or so. And even though I liked the feral animalistic portrayal of the vampires, I absolutely hated the all the speeches, an ancient tongue of anti-human and old god, just lame and right shit that Danny Houston was going throughout the movie. It annoyed the shit out of me. But ultimately, this movie wasn't a failure or it wasn't, I fucked up my thing. It wasn't an embarrassment or a classic. It was a failure. This movie was an absolute goddamn failure. Now, while promoting the film, David Slade said his intention was to make vampires vicious again and monstrous again, make them scary again, because he felt there had been too many decades of trying to romanticize vampires both in television and movies. And then the very next year after this movie, it didn't bomb, but Sony was disappointed in the box office. It made more than double its budget. That's net. Leave it alone. But ended up the very next year was Twilight. And fuck, man. And then the guy who made this movie ended up making fucking Twilight 3. The fuck, you traitor. You son of a bitch. That's why he hasn't worked since, because he betrayed horror movies. But kind of worse than anything else, this movie seemed to be the nail in the coffin for Josh Hartnett's career. Because what have you seen him in the last 14 years? I never thought he was a great actor. I thought he was a bit of a poser, sure, but there was plenty of potential. He's tall, handsome, talented. With the right director, with the right role, someone could get something really special out of this guy. But yeah, man, this was it for him. I mean, it's like I don't think I've seen him in anything since this film came out. But in a positive note, this was also part of Ben Foster's phenomenal 2007. Not only was he in this, he also played Jake Mazursky in Alpha Dog, and the best performance of the entire year, Charlie Prince in the James Mangold's 3:10 to Yuma remake. Now I'm going to talk about the next movie, but first, gotta refill my drink, so I'm going to cheat and hit pause. Hey folks, now we're back to part 2. Almost started a whole new video. This kind of got mixed up there. But my next movie is Wishmaster from 1997. We're going back in time a little bit. This movie is directed by Robert Kurtzman and produced by Wes Craven. Film stars Tammy Lauren, Andrew Duvall, Robert Englund, Ted Raimi, Tony Todd, Chris Lemmon, Kane Hodder, and the unsinkable Reggie Bannister. The whole premise here is film kicks off. It's an evil genie movie. The movie had a shitload of sequels, so it's so many sequels. I saw at least the first sequel, but I don't think any of them came out in theaters. I mean, I saw more sequels, but I know Andrew Duvall kind of kept coming back to the role, and he's just great. I'm going to talk about him when we get to the end here. But the whole setup here is the movie opens in ancient Egypt, and this guy has the pharaoh has a jinn, who is basically a genie, but instead of a lamp, it's a stone that summons him. But he's from a different dimension, another universe where they're so much more powerful than us, and they hate us, they want to rule us, they want to take over us. So all anybody has to do for a jinn to open up the gateways to let all his brotherhood in to take over the world is to allow somebody to fulfill their 3 wishes. And this dude really just... I love this song. This guy really... His wish is really just to have a memorable party. And, and of course, it's just a huge bloodbath, a slaughter. I really want James Janice to do this whole franchise just for the opening scene of the first movie, but then, you know, he'd have to suffer through like 5 more weeks of shitty movies. So, and no, that's not fair. So, eventually the sorcerer is able to contain the jinn before he tricks the pharaoh into making his 3rd wish, and we jump ahead thousands of years later in modern day America. Modern day America being a quarter century ago. They're bringing this sarcophagus down to off a ship on a crane to this big collector played by Robert Englund, but the guy running the crane is drunk. The sarcophagus falls, crushes his assistant in a great take. Robert Englund's like, the guy gets crushed. He is dead. Could not be more dead. And England's just like, is the sarcophagus okay? You know, that kind of shit. That was great. But of course it's not. The guy, one of the dock workers ends up hawking it to Chris Lemmon, who takes it to the gorgeous Tammy Lauren, who she ends up accidentally rubbing it, accidentally making a wish. It turns out that she has this kind of this dark backstory of she was able to drag her little sister out of a burning house, but wasn't able to save her parents. Has always blamed herself for their deaths. Really doesn't have all that much to do with the movie, to be fair with you. So there's also this guy that is her guy who's total friend zoned. She takes the thing to him to look at him, for him to look at it, and eventually she makes her wish since she was the one who rubbed it. And the stone explodes. The genie comes out. This little nasty looking thing. The explosion fatally injures the guy. While he's bleeding out, the djinn walks up to him and crawls over to him. Do you want me to end your pain and suffering? And the guy says yes, and of course he just kills the fucker and gets stronger off of every wish. He can't use his magic unless somebody makes a wish, but he always tries to make each wish benefit him. Monkey paw shit, you know. So, he's trying to track down the girl, trying to force her to make her 3 wishes. He kills many people along the way, including a couple of cops, a couple of horror icons, collecting souls to make himself powerful as he goes. He tricks her into making her first wish by showing him what she truly is. He does that to trap her in the jewel. Gets her to make her second wish to get her to come out of the jewel. And now she's going to, he's on his way to the party. Some big, Robert Englund's big party. To kill her little sister, who's been invited to the party because she's a hot early 20s girl who's connected to high society. That's just... you wonder why people worry about shit like Pizzagate. You know what I mean? Anyhow. So... the djinn makes his way to the party. The girl makes her way to the party. But he's talking to Robert Englund. And Robert Englund says, I want to have a memorable party. And your wish is my command. So, fuck, gonna die. So he just kills everybody. Big slaughterhouse at the end here. Just rips everyone apart. Sister's running all over the place. She's running all over the place looking for her sister. Eventually, he's trying to use the sister, threatening to kill the sister, get her to make her 3rd wish. And she finally makes her 3rd wish. And she kind of, goes detective, Angela Lansbury style, and throws it together and goes, her 3rd wish is, I wish the guy running the crane wouldn't have been drunk that morning. And, yeah, he has to grant the wish, which means he goes back in the jewel, which means none of those people died, which means nothing in this movie happened, which is the ultimate horror movie cop-out. Still better than 30 Days a Night. So the movie ends with her going to the friend zone dude, taking him out of the friend zone, probably finally going to give him the nookie. That's right, the nookie. And the last shot of the djinn and his jewel kind of swiping away the camera. Fuck off, I don't want to talk to anybody right now. And that's Wishmaster. Gotta praise Andrew Duvall. Amazing performance. He's like subtle and undertone and sinister and, that kind of shit when he's under all the makeup and costume. But when he's just like he's wearing a face, pretending to be someone else, he ended up stealing a face from a morgue in one scene. Then it's all big and theatrical. He looks like a guy pretending to do overdubbing of Japanese Godzilla movies. But it's just like, it's really kind of this fascinating and brilliant and uber campy performance, and all rolling great. I mean, it's one of a kind, and goddamn it, I wouldn't want to replace her for the world. I love him in this movie. The only thing these movies really have in common is they came out in a year that ended in a 7. And both movies are more promoted around who produced it than the actual film itself. Ultimately, when it comes down to Wishmaster, classic or embarrassment, it's a horror classic. I would call Wishmaster a horror classic, and it's one of the few 90s horror movies I would definitely recommend people to see. I very much have always enjoyed Wishmaster, down to a cool premise, a great villain, an awesome poster, and a wonderful abundance of horror movie icons being victimized by our new horror movie villain. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a classic. It's a classic. I love the Wishmaster. Go see it again if you haven't seen it in a while. I believe it is still available on Hulu. That's where I watched it the other night. Anyhow, I hope y'all enjoyed this pair of retro reviews, this creature double feature, if you will. I'm Jake Davis, and I'll catch you on the fly.